So we are in Calvert City. This is roughly about 9 miles from our house. We live in Benton, it's Calvert. So as you can see, the road is flooded across down there, and then the horses are out in our field. So luckily it was they caught pretty easy. It wasn't too bad. My daughters are really good at doing this stuff, so I'm not a horse guy. I've never really been a horse guy. I've tried to ride a couple times and not had much luck with it, so I stuck to bicycles and running myself. But anyway, let's get back to your normal scheduled video. What up, YouTube? We are back. I'm Sean James, and this is Kentucky, the mini truck state. On today's video, we're still working on the Nissan, but we are going to work on getting the rear amp rack built. I'm excited to get started on this. It's something that's been kind of bothering me for a while. I'm going to be happy to get started on it, but anyway. Before we do get started, make sure and do all the good YouTube things. Hit the like switch, comment down below, hit the notification bell, and make sure you share my videos. If you're not already a subscriber, please consider hitting the subscribe button. You can see we've got the MDF sitting outside. We've got our amps laid out here, and look how bad those have faded in the sun. They're all black when I got them, and where they're in the sun, they've just faded really badly. So that amp is probably 4 years old. That one and that one are probably 3 years old, and the other two are 3 years old for sure. So anyway, I'm gonna work on getting the layout figured out. How they're showing on the bench is basically how I'm wanting to lay them out. They're gonna be vertical instead of horizontal this time. So what I'm going to do, like I did last time, the first thing I'll do is I'll make a panel for the amps to sit in, and then I'll build everything around that once I get it in there. And so I'll be able to use the old wing walls off this wall hanger now to get a real nice tight fit. Instead of being this way, they'll be this way. So it's a little bit wider that way, but I think it's going to turn out really nice. I'll be able to put a battery bank on each side and then have a space in the center for all my wiring, so everything will be really nice and symmetrical. That was something that always kind of bothered me with my last setup, was the battery off to one side and nothing on the other side. It doesn't really balance out very well. I mean, it's nitpicky at best, but you know, that's just how I felt about it. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is get set up to make the amp rack box to start with. I'm going to do the same thing and set it off a little bit, but not nearly as far. I think I'll just go with like 2 or 3 inches, so there's a little bit of room for air back behind it. And then the thickness of the amp, so I'll probably end up maybe 4 inches versus being 8 inches. Which last time I had that curve, I had the curve at the top, which dictated it needing to be so deep. Now I'm not going to be curving it; it's going to be just a flat rack. So let me go ahead and get that part laid out. Poor Nissan Mazda back there is crying, and I've had people, man, get back on the Mazda. I get it. This will be a quick, easy project. Hopefully, maybe a week or two of this, and I'll be done with it. But we'll have to see and go from there. So let me go ahead and get this laid out, and then I'll come back and pick you up once I kind of figure out exactly how I want to do this. All right, so one of the hardest parts about getting a box started is getting your first cuts. I bought this at Lowe's. It's a Bora Portamate, and it's used to rip sheets down. And so I use the fence on my saw, and it's 1.5 inches. So all I got to do is line it up on my marks, 1.5 inches wider than what I really need to start with. Line it up, then you have this clamp. You clamp that down, and that holds it tight. Then you have a fence to run your saw against. So let me get my saw, and we'll get that going. All right, so another thing I like to do is make sure and set my saw the correct depth, so it just barely cuts through my board. That it helps with tear out and causing other issues. So this piece is going to be 35.5 by 34. And then that way the amps have plenty of room to mount there. So let's go ahead and get this ripped, and we'll start kind of getting it laid out. So as you can see, your saw just runs right against that guide, and man, it really makes it nice to get good straight lines and all that. So all right, so now I need to get cut for length. Then we'll bring the amps over and kind of set them down, and we'll do the same thing I did the amp rack inside. Is I'll cut slots for the amps to be able to cool. That way air can get back behind it. Whenever we cut this off, whatever I have left off that piece will actually be enough to make the two sides. And once we get those on, we'll be able to figure it out from there. Say hi, honey. We'll have to edit that out. You can't give the #1 sign to your husband. That's not very nice. Maybe I'll just shoot her over my shoulder. She won't be in the shot, but she'll still be there. Hi, honey. She's a crazy cat lady. Meow. She hates cats. Well, she doesn't hate cats. She's allergic to cats, so. All right, let me get this set down. We'll get that cut off, then we'll lay these amps out, and we'll get that stuff marked and get it ready to go. All right, we got that piece cut. This is gonna be our scrap piece, and we're gonna make our two sides for the amp rack out of it. So what we want to do is I'll set the table saw up. I think what we want to do is I measure this, and this is right at like 9 inches deep total. We're gonna end up going with 5. That way it's actually back behind where this is at, and that'll give us room for our lithium bank to go on each side of that. So let's go ahead and rip that down to 5 inches. We'll get it laid out with our other piece, and we'll figure out how we can modify it like we did the other amp racks where there's openings on the side. So one of the things I always do whenever I'm building stuff like this is I always make sure and build spacers. The face of this thing is going to be spaced back 1.5 inches. So then once we put the face on, it'll be 2 1/4, and then the amps will be flush with the front. So this is basically like our fake front panel. So what we got to do is come in here, we'll mark this down, we'll mark a line on it, and I'll pre-drill all the holes beforehand, and then we'll mount each side to the box. And then once we get that amp rack kind of up there where we want it, we'll bring the amps out here, set them down, we'll get them laid out, mark it out with a pencil. Then we'll mark inside of that, like the width of this, like 1.5 inches. And we'll cut that box out of the hole. That way the amps have air back behind it, like I did on this one right there. So let me get this box kind of built together, and then I'll show you once I get that together what we're gonna plan on doing from there. All right, you can see the amp rack starting to kind of take shape. So something that I always do is I always draw out where my lines are at. I pre-drill the holes, I chamfer the hole. That way when I put the screws in, they suck in nice and clean, and I get a nice tight fit. And what I'll do before I get real carried away with this is I'll go ahead and pre-drill it, and I'll put a few of the screws in just to tack it together. And then I want to make sure everything's going to work before I actually, take it apart and glue it. That way if I need to modify something, change something that's not glued, and then I'm like really having to fight to get it apart. So I'll build the entire rack first, get it set in the truck, and then we will go off of that and decide how we want that to look. So that looks like a huge box. It's pretty big, so I'm excited to see how this is going to turn out though. So let's get this pre-drilled and we'll get it tacked together. All right, so this is going to be the layout. The amps are upside down right now, but that's not really that important. So what I want to do is go through and mark where each amp is, and that way I can draw lines through it so we can cut the bottom out. Again, I want these amps to be able to breathe as much as possible so they don't get hot. That way they're not just completely covered up. This is something I've done on pretty much every amp rack I've ever built. So why change what I do now? I have a 1/2 inch gap. As you saw in the time lapse where I was gapping all the amps with a 1/2 inch. That way they're the same all the way across there. I think it's like 7/16 on each end, so that's not a big deal. And so the whole point of me doing it this way is whenever I go to put the wing walls on the side, whenever I put this on here, you'll see now that's really close to almost dead flush with that amp. So that's gonna look really good. It'll give me a place to wrap this over. And I think what I want to do is I think I want to paint this yellow and then wrap the wing walls. And I want to wrap them the same. I plan on wrapping the front, two-toned, light, dark, same thing. So need to make sure I mark the tops of these two. But I'll just mark each side. Then we can just put a line across it. It'll be a whole lot easier than marking all of them. There's no reason to mark all of them. So and there's that. So now we take the amps back inside, set them out of the way for right now, kind of show you the next step that I plan to do. And luckily this will leave me room for future upgrades as well, which I don't plan on doing many upgrades, being honest. All right, so we'll mark this. What I'm gonna do is put my board on the inside. That's gonna leave me an 1.5 inch gap back to that opening. We'll take and mark it across here. We'll do the same thing up there. We'll put the lines on the outside of it. Mark the inside. Then on this one here, we'll just do it all against the rail. Let's do this. We'll go 3/4 on those. So I can't see to split the difference really easily, so. Dogs barking at my neighbor, like I always do. Granny, Mowgli, one of you. And so what I'll do is I'll take a jigsaw, skill saw, cut it out close, and I'll actually tape strips to it and use my router table to actually cut this out nice and straight, then use a roundover bit to round it over to make it nice and clean. Nobody's ever going to see what it looks like when it's done, but I don't know how it's done when I did it. So it's just one of those things that I've always trying to take pride in my work. So this gets cut out, and that'll allow the amps to be able to breathe there. So yeah, you can kind of see how that's going to work. And then the same thing on these sides, we'll end up marking them out and cutting little window holes out in the sides. I'll show you that whenever we get to that point, but I'm going to go ahead and take a skill saw and just cut these out really close, and we'll just kind of go from there. All right, looky there. So you can see by this dirt line, that's where the old one was. So we've gained that much room, and it's not coming out as far this way, so we still have room back here. So we're definitely gonna have more room available as far as that goes. I'll have to reach a little further and get to the amps, and we'll probably have to tune it with the shell off, put it back on, put the sides on, but I'm not too worried about that. So yeah, that's not too bad so far. And so really the only thing we really have left to figure out are the wing walls. And I know for a fact I could take the old ones off the wall in there, make copies of them with my router, and just put them up there and mark them and cut them. So the sides are pretty much done. I mean, this amp rack can be really simple to do. I don't have a lot to figure out. So what I do want to figure out is once I get the amps in there, whether I put some sort of trim panel or some sort of mount for that 10-spot fuse panel. So, so basically I'll have the battery bank on each side, that fuse box in the middle, then the wires will go over and come up into each amp. I'll have the powers at the bottom, speaker wires at the bottom, and they all should be long enough to reach the amps. I was kind of worried about that, but looking at it should be okay. The only thing I have left to do is cut these sides out, and we'll do that here in just a minute. It's starting to look like rain over that way, and if you know MDF, it is terrible with rain, so I'll probably go ahead and get this cleaned up today. We'll pick it back up tomorrow. It's getting dark outside. Looks like the rain moved off, so I want to go ahead and get these side panels made. And the way I'm doing that is I'm taking the old side panels and I'm using my router with a flush trim bit to copy them. And that should be all I need to do to make these fit the size, because these fit really, really well to begin with. So let me get set up and we'll show you how we do that. All right, then with any luck, this should just fit right into the left side. We'll do a live feed here. Let's see how it actually works. Now, it's gonna be wider than what the hole is gonna be because I don't have it cut for width yet. I left it a little bit wide, knowing I'd have to trim that, so. This is always a fun part, getting this one in. Oh, I'm getting attacked by the topper. It actually fits good. There's a grommet for the ground going through for the DSP from before that's right in the way, so I've got to put it in a little bit different angle. But I think we're gonna be good to go. There's that. I'm not mad at that at all. That'll work. That's gonna get wrapped. So, definitely made this side a lot smaller than what it was before, which is fine. I think the amps all going across are gonna look good. Also have room for like maybe some LED lights to kind of brighten things up. I have a good place for my DSP to go still. So yeah, I like it. I'm gonna go ahead and make the other pattern real quick, or the other panel, and get it cut. Like I said, it's dark. It's actually 7:30, and I just like to get these kind of cut. That way I'm not thinking about it all night, because I'm sure y'all know how that goes. You get something in your brain, you can't shut it off. So yeah, I'm real happy with this. So let me get the other one done. We'll check it real quick. That makes it so much easier than trying to do it with a jigsaw or something like that and really make it fit well. So I have a feeling the screw just broke off, which is fine. Yep, it broke off. All right, this one's a lot wider than the other one, so this is definitely going to be too wide, but god dang it, I'm getting attacked by my damn topper every time. I need to get a clamp put on there. I need new struts, what I need. Oh, it's Grace again. Little Miss Grace. She's always getting over it. How about that? Man, that is so much better than the first time I did it. I took cardboard and had to try and make it fit, and oh my goodness, it was an absolute nightmare. So I'll take a pencil, mark the back side, and I'll take a straight edge and cut it. I maybe use the router table to cut that straight edge. I'll get a piece of metal strap, put on there, and use it as a ride for the bearing. Same thing over here. But yeah. It's already, look at that. Not bad at all. So, man, I'm happy as can be with that. That was so easy. So, like I said, I built it before, so that makes it a lot easier. I'll have to do the same thing I did with that rack and make standoffs in the back to hold these corners on and all that stuff. But yeah, it's getting, it don't look like it's dark, but it's getting dark. So, but yeah. I'm gonna need Donnie here before long, have him wrap this stuff, help me out, make it look good, Donnie. So I'm gonna put a couple marks on each side there and over there, so I can pop a line across there, do the same thing I want to do with the interior. Like I said, I want to take and wrap this with vinyl. I want to do light on top, dark on bottom. That way it kind of pulls the interior to the outside. And this time I'm actually thinking about maybe possibly putting some panels in this side to kind of fill this out. Maybe not all the way up, but like come up flush with this in there and kind of come up just to kind of maybe box that in a little bit. It doesn't really need it. It would just look a little more finished. But the only issue with that is when it rains, some water does get in there and go to car wash, so it would be more likely to warp or mess up. Most of the stuff will probably get painted, even though I'm planning on wrapping it, because MDF is terrible with water. And if you use oil-based paint on it, it's actually very resistant to water. So like I said, I've had this box in this truck for over 3 years now, and the panels that were in there, which I think you might see a little bit on this one, like it got wet, and that's really the only lifting that I have on any of this stuff. So, and that's very little, and that's where I go to the car wash and wash it off. So that explains why that's doing that. And so I like to paint it, and then I won't have to worry about it in the future. So it's getting dark enough that I need to stop for the night. I don't like doing these boxes in my garage. The floors are sweating, it is humid for spring. I don't want to cut stuff in there because it makes an absolute mess, all that dust, and then it gets on all the trucks, and it's with the floor being wet, then it sticks, and it's a nightmare. So let's say cut for tonight. We'll pick it back up tomorrow. Well, I couldn't leave good enough alone. I went ahead and trimmed it. So we can actually pull this whole thing out now and assemble it inside the garage. And I'm going to take about a 1/4 inch off the top of the amp rack. It's actually holding the camper shell up down here in the corner. I noticed it after I started looking at it. So I'll take a 1/4 or 1/2 inch off that. We have a little bit of room around the top. It's not going to be that noticeable. Most people have to really bend down to look in there. And plus, I'll give it room for the vinyl to wrap. So, but yeah, man, this is really turning out pretty nice. And it's not taking nearly as long as I was expecting. I figured this would be really a real pain in the neck. So, can't be happier with how it's turning out. And it almost looks like it belongs in there again. So, yeah. All right, so here's one of the things I always like to do when I'm trying to get really nice, clean, straight lines is I make a grid out of scrap pieces that I have. Like I said, the piece I cut out earlier, I use a skill saw and a jigsaw just to kind of get it roughed in. And then whenever you do that, whenever you use your router table, now all of a sudden have really nice, straight, clean lines, nice rounded corners. Like I said, I plan on rounding over all of these. You'll never see it. It doesn't matter, but it's something I'm always do just to try and, show that I care enough to take the time to do that kind of stuff. So the amp's gonna sit over top of this. That way they have everything to the back side. Stay nice and cool. These little things on the back will get taken off. They were just for the pattern to do that. I've done some really cool stuff with that. I don't know if I have them here anymore. I think I may have burnt them actually, but I made a really cool honeycomb pattern once out of it. Making block, it takes a long time to set it up and do it, but it can be done. So the plan now is I want to round this over, and then I want to round over the edge of the amp rack walls that go on each side, get those rounded over now, and then we'll pick it up after I get that done. Alright, so I got this routed out, and you can see how it softens that edge. and really makes it look a whole lot better. So we'll do the same thing on the wing walls. And once we get them ready, we'll be able to start kind of assembling this part of it. I'd still have to take about 1/4 inch off the top of this and the two side walls. That way everything still fits the way I want it to, and it's not lifting the copper cover, so the caper shell. So let me get the two sides routed off, and we'll start putting this thing back together and figure out how we're going to mount it to the back of the box. What's going on, Kendall?
Well, the pasture flooded. Now we got to catch on horses.
We've got 7 inches of rain in the last 2 days. We have about 30 acres of land out here in Calvert City, and our horses are flooded. So we're having to get them out to higher ground. We're going to take them to my wife's sister's place. So right now we got to catch them and get them loaded up. What is going on, everybody? We are back. So while I was away, I went ahead and got this done. So remember I told you earlier I was going to two-tone this with vinyl. So I took a skill saw and cut straight across both panels. I actually butted the panels side by side, marked a line straight across, and so that's going to mimic the line on the interior. Like I said, the top is going to be a lighter brown, the bottom will be like a darker brown. I've got that vinyl actually inside the Mazda. You can see it right in there. Can't really see the color of it, but it's in there. So now that I have this much of it done, my idea is I want to take and primer all of this, front side, back side, all the good stuff. That way, if it does ever get wet, it won't swell. It'll just have to dry out. With MDF, it's always a good idea to take precautions for stuff like that because you never know what's going to happen. So there'll be a battery bank on each side with 3 sets of 6, so it'll be 18 cells per side. So there'll be one there and one over here to mimic it. And I think what I'm going to do is put the grounds on the outside and then run the positives on the inside, or vice versa. May do the grounds shorter. Of course, none of them are going to be very long to start with, so it's not going to be too bad anyway. But that way I'll still have that kind of cascading look that I had before. So it's kind of the idea is make it look similar to what I had, but not exactly the same. But like I said, there'll be another battery bank, so this time it'll actually even out really well. I'm going to take and put the PRV 2.4X up here again. Same thing with the RCA splitter. This time the RCAs will be up at the top, so you're not really going to see them, which is fine. Nobody really cares about that stuff. It will be kind of harder to tune the amps, but they're already set. I shouldn't have an issue with that. I'm going to talk to one of the guys local to me who has offered to help me retune my stuff, Daniel Warren. I'm going to talk to him about possibly helping me retune it, and if we get to that point, I can just take the topper off. We can access it all pretty easily and set it up that way, so I'm not really too worried about it. It will be accessible, it'll just be a little bit more of a pain in the neck, but it can be done. So yeah, it's coming along really good. Once I get this primered, I got a busy week coming up. Like I said, we've had so far 16 inches of rain. It is crazy. It has rained nonstop since Wednesday, off and on. I finally decided, screw it. I'm going to work in the garage. Now my garage is absolutely destroyed with MDF dust. I got tired of sitting around and waiting to do something, so I just had to get to this point. I'm pretty sure that the mount is going to stay like that in the center. I may drop it down a little bit. That is just a spare piece that I had just to kind of hold it up for kind of a demonstration. It'd be a little bit too high for where the power come out of the amp. I actually wanted to sit down about another 1.5 inches or so, maybe even 2 inches. It's not going to matter how far that goes down. I just want to make sure they have plenty of room to get the wires fished in there. I may have to get different cabling because I'm currently using 2-aught welding cable, and that stuff is not very flexible. The stuff that I have, there are some more flexible cables out there, but I may just go ahead and bite the bullet and actually buy some 1-aught Skar Audio cable because that stuff is much more flexible and use it. The bad thing is it's like $5 to $6 a foot now. It's gotten pretty ridiculous. And even no more than what you'll see there, it's still going to take about probably 40 feet at least to wire these amps up. So like I said, there's 10 power, 10 grounds. I got to run probably 4 grounds on each side down to the frame to make sure and ground the batteries out really, really good. I need to run new power from the front to the back, so I have more runs for power to the batteries and tie them together. So there's going to be that, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to how it's coming together. So I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and stop the video right there until we get more done. Once I get this primered, get it ready to wrap, then we'll come back, we'll do that. We still have to work on the front panel. It'll be very similar to what we're doing here. I've got another piece of 1/2 inch, and there's the front panel. I may just do the same thing and copy it, or I can still even just use that panel. There's nothing wrong with it. So I may just do that. I've got the lines marked on it as well. Just do the same thing, cut the line straight across, wrap the top, wrap the bottom, wrap the top amp rack panel to match. The bottom part, probably just leave it alone. You can't really see it anyways behind the seat. So, but like I said, I'd like to wrap a lot of that stuff, trying to make it look a little better. And then we can work on doing some of the sound deadener and stuff like that. I don't want this to be a long, drawn-out process, so I may do some of the stuff off camera, just because of the fact it takes so much just trying to decide how you want it to come out, what you want it to look like. It's not worth showing a lot of that stuff, and then I get working and forget to record stuff, and then I end up with a full panel, which you can see the old amp rack on the wall versus the one I got now. So yeah, I'm happy with how it's turning out. It's going to be really neat. I got to make the wing walls for the back to attach. Back there, I made a standoff, so I had a place to actually bolt my front panel onto without it being right on the edge. That way, it's not in the. That way, these screws are not right in the edge of that panel into the curve, because that always looks really bad. So I put a secondary panel back there, pre-drilled it, and then ran those screws in. That's what holds it on there. I do like the way those look. That's why I did it again. I know there's a few different ways you can do that, but I like how that looks. And then I made sure to grab it a groove there to fit in there. I talked to my friend Donnie, and he was giving me some tips on how to do this stuff. So thanks again, Donnie. He's a good dude, a good friend, and I do appreciate him helping me out. He owns an upholstery business. I'll have to put it down here on the screen. I can't remember what it is right offhand, but he just built a truck that won Best of Show interior. It's in the Nissan Hardbody. Beautiful truck. I'll show you a picture here. Really nice. He did a good job. But anyway, let's go ahead and cut off here. I appreciate y'all following along. Make sure and do all the good YouTube things. Make sure and hit the like switch down. Hit the like switch. Comment down below. Hit the notification bell, and make sure and share my videos. And if you're not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. I would appreciate it. And we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.